I think Billy Edwards could be the best quarterback the Badgers have had 10 plus years. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are here. Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. I had a weird technical glitch there. My screen just froze, so I don't actually know what happened, but I think we're here. I think we're all back together working through this. Welcome to today's show, Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Thank you for being an everydayer. Thank you for being part of this community, your team every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, football's around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Golden Sox says he's actually here for a live. Let's go, brother. And then Badger and Boardmouth says Mertz. We're going to get to this in a second. I was thinking about this the other day, and a lot of thoughts. I think about the Badgers a lot, right? Because I talk about them daily. And I was thinking about Billy Edwards, trying to think of the context of where he could be amongst Badger quarterbacks. How could he be the best quarterback since that back-to-back run of Tolzien and Russell Wilson? Could he really actually, which speaks, by the way, we're going to go through them all, which speaks to the inability typically for the Badgers to develop and get high level quarterback play. But I also think Billy Edwards could be pretty good. And I started going through the list, and we're going to walk back it together. There's one that I think could be, and we're going to walk through this list together, but better than last year, Braden Locke, Tyler Van Dyke. Yes, he's definitely better than that, in my opinion. Year before that, Tanner Mordecai. I think Billy Edwards is better than Tanner Mordecai. And again, context matters in some of this. Tanner Mordecai was in an offensive scheme that we kind of found out didn't make a ton of sense, maybe. I think he was better than he showed. But I think Billy Edwards is a little bigger, probably a little better arm. He's done it at a higher level. Tanner's a better athlete. Tanner could move better. But I think I would take Billy Edwards Jr. over Tanner Mordecai. So then you go before that, you have Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz finishing out his career, in 2021, it was 10 touchdowns, 11 picks, 59% completion percentage. I know Badger and Boardmouth says Mertz. Billy Edwards is better than Mertz, in my opinion. So we keep going back. We keep walking this back. You get to Jack Cohn next. Jack Cohn's the first one where you look at, and I think a lot of people are going to say Cohn was better. Matthew Anderson says Cohn will, Edwards is going to end up somewhere between Wilson and Cohn. You look at Cohn's last year, and I think this is a good discussion. Billy Edwards Jr., which we're projecting out, but we have seen him play in the Big Ten, or Jack Cohn. Jack Cohn last 2019, 69% completion percentage, 2,700 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. Okay. Billy Edwards Jr., 65% completion percentage, so a little bit lower than Jack Cohn, 2,800 yards, so more than Jack Cohn, and a 15-9 touchdown to interception ratio. So numbers are pretty close. Cohn with a better decision-making, less picks, a few more touchdowns. But then you got to zoom out because you got to look at who Cohn had on his team and then compare it to what Billy Edwards did. Jack Cohn had Jonathan Taylor. Jack Cohn had Jake Ferguson. Jack Cohn had Quintez Cephas and A.J. Taylor and Danny Davis. He had Tyler Biadasz on that team, Cole Van Lanen. Sneaky, that offense was kind of sneaky loaded to some degree. And Cohn did a great job of navigating it. Cohn did a great job of being a decision maker, more mobile than people remember or thought he was. You remember that a game against Ohio State where he was able to use his feet to get into the end zone. Cohn was really solid to good. Cohn was surrounded by a lot more talent offensively at Wisconsin his 2019 season than Billy Edwards was last year at Maryland. Last year, Billy Edwards' offensive line was atrocious. It was terrible. He had Ty Felton and not much of anything else, and still put up numbers pretty close to Jack Cohn. I think Billy Edwards could be better than Jack Cohn. So let's keep going backwards. Then you have Alex Hornibrook. I would take Billy Edwards, I think, over Alex Hornibrook. Again, we're projecting here, but based on what we've seen, based on film I've watched, based on watching him practice, based on talking to people, I would take him over Alex Hornibrook, right? Like nobody's going to dispute that, are they? Oh, Douglas Richards said, don't sleep on Hornibrook. He had some very nice seasons. His last year was pretty bad or pretty mediocre. And I think Billy is a better athlete, runs a little better than Hornibrook. Hornibrook certainly wasn't terrible. Make no mistake, but I would take Billy Edwards over Hornibrook. Keep going backwards. Then you have Stave. Nobody's taking, I don't think, Joel Stave over Billy Edwards. Rajiv jumping in. Listen, I love that you're jumping in the middle of this conversation. Here's my thought process. I don't know if you caught any of this. I'm wondering, could Billy Edwards be the best quarterback at Wisconsin since Russell Wilson 2011? And the context of that, if you start walking it back, last year, obviously, Braden Locke, you're going to take Billy Edwards over Braden Locke, Tyler Van Dyke, probably Tanner Mordecai.
Probably, yeah.
So let's go Jack Cohn. And that was my first one I paused at because Jack Cohn, I think, is in the same tier. However, if you look at that Jack Cohn team, I already ran their numbers. Their numbers are pretty close. Cohn's last year, Billy Edwards last year at Maryland. Cohn had Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Biadasz, Cole Van Lanen, Jake Ferguson, Quintez Cephas, AJ Taylor. Jack Cohn had a much better offense, and his numbers weren't markedly better than Billy Edwards, who at Maryland had Ty Felton and nobody.
I feel like the first thing that popped in my head as a place to stop was Jack Cohn.
Okay.
And I think we'll only really know at the end of the year, but Jack Cohn was he was pretty good. I mean, he had his faults, of course, but the guy could move, the guy could throw. He was talk about a competitor. We talk a lot about leadership in competition with Edwards. I mean, that was Jack Cohn to a T. So I think they're pretty much on par. I would expect, and I've said this before, I feel like Cohn and Edwards, to me, that's the level that I want. If we get Jack Cohn out of Edwards, I'm happy with that. Like, I feel like we'll be in a much better spot offensively with a Jack Cohn, basically.
And I think you could make that argument, whether it's Cohn or potentially what we think Edwards can be. We have to see it. But I think Edwards, when you look at their numbers, could even be a little bit better than Cohn. I think he could probably move a little bit better. And then if you go just beyond Cohn, let's just say that he's a little better than Cohn. I'm not saying he is, but let's say he is. Behind him, you have Stave, Hornibrook, McAvoy, Phillips, Daniel Bryan, sorry.
Yeah, I was like, Daniel Neal's on the team.
Sorry, Daniel Bryan. My point is, Billy Edwards could be one of the two best quarterbacks for the Badgers in the last 14 years, going back to Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the one thing that's clear is the ceiling is there for sure. Like, he can be that. Will he be? That's a different discussion. I think he'll be Cohn, but yeah, like, could he be better than Hornibrook, Stave? Sure, he absolutely could be, but it's unlikely. Like, I loved Joel Stave. I also liked Alex Hornibrook. Like, Hornibrook had some of the best numbers we've seen out of an offensive system, right? So I think that's a little bit lofty, but he absolutely could. He could be the best quarterback since Russell Wilson. He could, but I don't think that's really going to happen per se. But I think Cohn, that's the level for me.
So I like Stave too. I would echo that. I think he was a gamer. He was a leader, had a big arm, but he couldn't move. Like he couldn't move at all.
But I mean, okay, so yes, but I mean, he was also like, from a pure passing perspective and leadership perspective, I think Stave was good. Yes, like when you're comparing different physical tools, sure, like, you know, Edwards is much more on par with what Cohn could do physically, no doubt. But Stave, I think, is pure quarterback. Like, I trust Stave more than I would trust Edwards, at least in hindsight, you know?
That's crazy to me, which, by the way, I love. I love disagreeing with people that
I mean, Stave was dependable, man. Like, I need to pull up Stave's numbers.
Yeah, Stave he went like 14 games where he couldn't throw the ball.
Right? Yeah, well, there was that. You're right. Okay, he had the yips. Damn it, you're right about the yips. He had the yips.
And then I think you look at Hornibrook, and I did mention, because someone else brought up Hornibrook in here and said, hey, Hornibrook had a couple good years.
Yeah.
I don't want to, completely sleep on that. He also couldn't move like Edwards. Like, I think they're similar as passers, but Edwards can move a little bit better. And there were some things Hornibrook did to lose parts of that team from a leadership standpoint, whereas you've talked about, like, you've been around the team, people speak. They put Billy on a leadership standpoint, had Patrick Herb on the show, talked about the same thing. I'm not as high on Hornibrook as people are, I guess. I think that's what I'm coming around to.
Yeah, I can hear that argument for sure. Obviously, he was on a really good team that actually we did well with him. But yeah, like, definitely 100%. Like, I had a chance to interview Billy Edwards, and man, like, he is really he talks the talk. There's no doubt about that. Like, my excitement level is there. I think ultimately now we're getting closer to the season, right? There's all these previews and things like that, college football, everything. And inside the program, like us, like we're inside in the sense that we're inside Badger fans. So any Badger fan has a certain like sort of viewpoint. Outside, there's a lot of people thinking, oh, Billy Edwards, like it's a third transfer quarterback in a row. He didn't do that well at Maryland. So I think there's a lot of trepidation outside of Madison for what he could do. Inside, yeah, I'm certainly higher on him than most people on the outside. But I do still I'm trying to sort of temper my expectations a little bit. That's why I say if we get Jack Cohn, I'm good with that. Like I think that he wasn't perfect either, but we definitely could be so much better if that's the production level that we get.
Will Hanna says, I threw the ball better than the Hornster. There are some not Hornibrook fans out there. That's fair. And I hear the trepidation, but as Bain said when he was starting off that great last bit of the Batman trilogy, the new trilogy, said, now's not the time for fear, doctor. That comes later. Now's the time for optimism, Rajiv. Now's the time for optimism. The fear comes later. We're going to talk about some more stuff coming up next. Your comments. I got some great stuff here. We're talking offensive line, tight end room, running backs. Your comments, a bunch coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show over at Wayfair. Wayfair, it's an incredible spot if you want to spice up your home for the summer as the summer starts to wind down. Wayfair makes it easy to set up for the season coming up, which is fall. Outdoor gear for the patio, maybe something to spice up the windows, the inside spot to watch football at. From bedding to linens to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair is your one-stop shop to refresh your home. Whatever you want to do, I get all of our home stuff on Wayfair. We got our grill on Wayfair. I've already talked about my fire pit I got on Wayfair. It's fast. It's simple. You get free shipping. You get great shipping. And you get great reviews of the products as well. So you know exactly what you're buying. And it's the perfect time, right? It's the perfect time as your house kind of transitions into the next season. Go on Wayfair and get it going. Get organized, refreshed, and back to the routine for way less. Head to Wayfair right now. Shop all things home. That's WAYFAR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Okay. Rajiv, I know I just shotgunned you into the show a little bit. I wanted to bring up this question because I was in a different Badger group. I was arguing back and forth. Offensive line depth is an issue. I think we would all agree that's at least something that is, well, whatever you put on the 1 to 10 scale, that's at least on the scale if you're looking at it objectively. How much of this is on the coaching staff not doing enough in the offseason to either attack that position in the portal or develop younger players? Or is this just completely bad luck? And while you think about that, because I've been thinking about this for a while, I think there's a degree of this that's on the coaches. I can absolutely understand the idea. Your left tackle got hurt. No team has a perfect left tackle in the balance. I don't think you should have to go to the portal immediately to get a replacement for the left tackle in fall, or not in fall, but as the season winds down. The fact that we didn't have that in-house tells me we should have done that already. Because what if Kevin Haywood got hurt in the season? You can't then go get a Davis Heinzen. I don't think there was enough done there considering Leighton Nelson was coming off an ACL. We know Renfro's had injury issues. The younger bodies we love, but as you and I have talked about, it's hard to expect those guys to step in right away. It feels like they needed another body there. I'll kick it over to you. What are your thoughts here?
I think it's a really interesting point. I hadn't really thought about that yet. And I like that I like that I was just throwing that question. That's good. Couple things. So yes, I think in hindsight, yes, you can look back and say didn't do enough. However, had Kevin Haywood not gotten hurt, and we would have had the Haywood, Brunner, we would only really be talking about the right guard as like, I wonder who's going to start. And Mandel, we're pretty happy about that right now. Malman, of course, Renfro. And then we had, like the Barrett Nelsons, the Leighton Nelsons of the world, the Ben Shawals, that kind of group, the young guys. What would your opinion have been about this O-line depth if Haywood wasn't hurt? Because I have a feeling that we wouldn't really be talking about the O-line depth. We might be if you're really parsing it out and really looking closely at it, but one guy can make a really big difference. So I'm hesitant to really put that on them only because if Haywood's healthy, I don't think I'm really worried about the offensive line depth. I'm not saying I shouldn't be. I think you're right about that. Like they should have had more foresight into it, but I think that one position really changes the whole complexion of things. Because now we're talking about the left guard potentially having some issues if Brunner ever has to go out, if Heinzen goes down. So I'm hesitant, but I do see your point. I think it's a very fair point. If they would have got another swing guard or a swing tackle in the transfer portal, sure, we would definitely feel better about that. But I think it's easy to look more hindsight now and say that that's the case. But if he wasn't injured, I don't know that we'd really be feeling that way.
And that's also a fair point. Like losing a Kevin Haywood is not something you could adequately prepare for, right? You can have contingency plans, and same with a Riley Mallman. If you lost a Riley Mallman, you were talking about a similar scenario. There's a couple guys that are really hard to replace. I will say this isn't completely contingent on Haywood for me, because in the summer I said one of the spots I thought they didn't do enough in the portal was adding another body on the offensive line, another veteran guy. So
another like 1 year eligibility kind of guy,
guy, or like a offensive line version of Hunter Simmons, like somebody who's played some ball and might just want to come up and experience Madison and could give you some veteran ability if somebody went down. Because again, I look at it like this: if Haywood went down during the season, who is the backup left tackle? Considering we had to go out and get Davis Hines in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the Nelsons, right? Like that's who you're going to end up with. I want to bring up this point because I was thinking about this, and I think Matt Van Grinson brings it up. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. If you bring in more guys, you have to let more guys eat. Maybe someone would have left the program, maybe someone younger, but then we'd have issues in the future. Perhaps that was part of the calculus. Like the offensive line room is loaded with young talent. I think we all can agree on that. Plus, you got another good class coming in. So from that perspective, maybe that was why they didn't go out and get someone. Maybe they expected one of the younger guys to be able to step up a little more. Maybe they expected a little more out of Ryan Corey or even Colin Cubberley. I mean, Colin Cubberley, I think they're all look like they're going to be good, but maybe they expected them to be more ready at the time. So I can kind of see this argument too. I think it's a very fair point that Matt brings up.
Yep. It is a fair point. That is a calculation. It's one of the reasons why I think we didn't bring in a running back last recruiting cycle, because we knew what we had in Dupree and Dilon, and you got to be careful doing those kind of things. I just also think at some point you can't prepare for next year and the year after. You got to be able to make it through this season. I made a comment. This is someone ingested. This is not completely fair to the staff. I want to be completely clear with that. And I love Blas. I like a lot of what's going on, but I would make the point that we almost didn't have enough depth to make it through Platteville, Rajiv. We have a season coming up. We almost, you know what I mean? Like, you should expect to lose a guy or two on the offensive line. Most teams do lose at least a guy or two. And it feels like we've got to scramble more than we should at that spot.
I think you're right. I mean, I think now that we're thinking about it, we're talking about it, I think it's a very fair point. There were surely more group of 5 left tackles that were out there in the portal. They could have been like, you know what? You got 1 year left eligibility. We only need it for 1 year. Go ahead and come on in, help us back up our team a little bit. So I do think that's fair. But I give them credit for going to get Hines, and obviously they needed that. They got it. They filled the need. But maybe they needed 2, and I think, but yeah, I think it's hard to say because, in that room, what are those discussions with Blazek and Fickle? Like, maybe Blazek's saying, look, I'm good. If you give me a left tackle, I'm comfortable with my young guys stepping in. I'm comfortable with Barrett Nelson and Leighton Nelson, and I think that'll work. So, I mean, it could have just been as simple as that. And then to your point, maybe that's something that, like we can be critical of Blazek for not asking for more potentially.
And Will points out there is depth there. It's just inexperience, but yeah, there is young talent there. And then Matthew also brings up kind of what we talked about on the other side, what tackle you're getting when you had a Kevin and a Riley who's coming here to back them up. Again, I think it is like a Heinzen guy, but you proactively get that instead of reactively get that. So he's in the system. He's already learning the plays. He's a little further along probably than throwing Heinzen in potentially. Again, it's easy to be Captain Hindsight also. Yeah. I'm not trying to do that. But it does feel like this could be something that's an issue all year. And there's so much optimism right now with this team moving in the right direction. The offensive line has to be decent. It just has to be. And I think it will be if they can avoid any other injuries. But, man, it is that's a worry spot for me. And maybe
and one of the reasons that we're also confident is the run game. And we talk about the running backs all day long. Well, if there's an issue on the line, then the running backs can't do what they need to do. Like, that's that simple. Like, they are reliant. The entire Grimes system is reliant on that. My hope, Ryan, is that some of the younger guys are more ready than we even know they are. Some of those guys could really step in and do a job if necessary. And I'm hoping that's the case. I'm also thinking that, we talk about Mandel, and I think he could be a versatile guy. Like, he's going to start at right guard, but that doesn't mean he can't play tackle. He could play right tackle if Mallman went down. Like, it's an option there. I mean, he's got the size for it. So I think maybe we could be underselling what those youth could do this year potentially.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, and listen to Cumberly as well. Cumberly could step in at guard, which would allow Brunner or maybe Mandel, either of those guys, to potentially kick out if you had to. I think you look at Cumberly as a really key part to this offense now. He's probably the swing guard, which allows you those guards to kick out if necessary. So, yeah, there's pieces here, and they have a couple more weeks to get some of those pieces ready. It sounded like Corey had a better time at practice the other day, so maybe he's starting to settle into that one of those backup center roles, which could also allow Kadenko to kick out to guard. So there's pieces here for sure. I'm not trying to sell this as the season's over. I want this season to be good, man. And I just worry that if there's another guy that goes down, I just worry that could undo it all.
It's definitely a concern. Like, I was hoping we'd be a bit healthier coming out of camp, but it's we'll see. I mean, all teams deal with this. All teams go through injuries. There's definitely teams that can lose their left tackle to a season-ending injury, but hopefully we've got a situation that we can make work. And I'm sure it's something that Blazik and Fickler are talking about, and Grimes. Like, they obviously spent a lot of time working with these guys. I think they've got their plan. And all I would say is I do trust Blazik, and I'm guessing if he really felt he needed someone else, he probably would have gotten him, but who knows?
I agree with you there. I think they have the right coaches in the room for that spot.
Yeah.
We're going to come back, take one more quick break, come back with our friend of the show, Rajiv, and all the friends of the show in the chat. I got more questions to Shotgun Rajiv with. He has no idea what we're doing on this show. So I got some more stuff coming up. Locked On Badgers for today's show, also brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. Right now, listen, football's coming up. Summer's still going on. You got baseball, you got golf, you got all this great action. Plus, again, football is starting soon. FanDuel is the #1 spot to get started with all of this action. Futures, parlays, teasers, spreads, it's all over there on FanDuel. Also, live in-game betting. And Rajiv, you and I have both taken, I don't want to speak for you. I've taken the over on the Badgers, 5.5 this year.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a lock, baby. Let's go. I mean, maybe.
I don't like the shoe-in of the week or the lock of the week, but we're over. And you can do that over on FanDuel. They're an incredible platform. It's fast, it's easy, it's simple, it's awesome. Right now, new customers bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's come back into this. Rajiv, we got a few more questions to get here, plus anything you see in the chat that you want to hit up on. Here's another one. This was kind of an interior mental grab bag of things that I found interesting that maybe haven't been talked about a ton. I think coming out of spring into summer through the first week and a half of Platteville, it was very clear the Badgers had seriously upgraded their quarterback room from last year, Billy and Daniel Neal. And then we started hearing, I don't know, maybe there's a backup quarterback battle. Maybe it's Hunter Simmons a little better. Are you a little more worried about that? Because there's two ways to look at that. You could be happy that Hunter Simmons looks better than we thought, but we also thought Danny O'Neal kind of was locked into this thing.
I don't think there's a backup quarterback battle. I think that's the coaches putting a fire under Danny O'Neal to continue to get better and continue to feel like he's got competition, because as we know, like, competition breeds, better play, iron sharpens iron. And I feel like, so that could just be like, not lip service, but they're just trying to push a little into Danny O'Neal to push harder, because really everyone knows it's Edwards and O'Neal, and who's pushing O'Neal? Well, they got to have somebody. It's Simmons. I don't think that's an actual competition battle. Now, he does have experience and he could be all right. Maybe he's better than we think we are, but I think, to me, it's 1-2 Edwards and O'Neal. And I'm not really bothered by that. I guess that's my point. I think that's coaches doing what coaches do.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think it's a little spicier. There was, just watching reps, there were times O'Neal's going in with the twos before Daniel, or Simmons in with the twos before O'Neal. And it felt like the coaches were checking on it, is maybe a good way to put it.
Let me ask you this. What was your take on what you saw from Simmons and O'Neal?
I kind of like Simmons. He's kind of big. He's 6'3". He can move. He can't move quite as well as O'Neal. O'Neal's a little quicker, but Simmons has a pretty good arm. And then you dig into it a little bit. Like, there's a kind of a coaching connection there coming over from Southern Illinois. I think they had some insight on Hunter Simmons, and he was a guy that got hurt his last year, but up until that point was putting up some decent numbers. I don't know. And then also, I thought Danny O'Neal underwhelmed a little bit. And maybe that was a couple bad practices. You want to be confident in your backup quarterback, I guess is my point. And I still think I am. I just think it's interesting because when Hunter Simmons came in, there was never a conversation about this guy will be getting reps with the twos at any point. it's just interesting to track these movements.
So if Braden Locke was on this team, is he number 4 or number 3?
Question. Where would last year Braden Locke fit into this? Gosh, dude, he could be 2.
Oh,
Like, I think he's in that. No, I do, because I think Braden Locke, you think back to what he had around him. Think who was the offensive coordinator for Braden Locke? Who is the running backs for Braden Locke? Who are the tight ends for Braden Locke? Braden Locke would look better with Jeff Grimes. Braden Locke would look better handing the ball to sophomore Dilon Jones and throwing to Mason. He would look better with this version of Vinny Anthony and an older Tretch and Ballard. I think my point is it's still probably not Braden Locke, but I think my point is I don't know if that tier is that different anymore.
Okay, and that may be. I mean, I would. My answer to that is I think he'd probably be 3 behind Danny O'Neil, and I watched some Danny O'Neil stuff from last year, so I feel like he's a better overall quarterback. But I do, yeah. I mean, I think even as you said, like him going in there. First of all, it's good that they're giving Simmons reps. That's important to build that up and build the confidence. But I think at the end of the day, Danny O'Neil probably left camp saying, I need to work harder. I need to be better. I need to make sure that I hold down this job. So, if Billy Edwards goes down, I'm going to be the number 2. And I think that's good. I'm glad that the coaches really pushed him a little bit. And whether it's real or not, it's not going to hurt to have Hunter Simmons getting those reps, because it's only going to give us a little bit more cover going into the season.
Yeah, and Len Beckett says, what's the issue if Simmons is pushing O'Neal? Let's have multiple guys that can be number 2, which I think Rajiv kind of aligns with what you're saying. I think I look at it, gosh, I feel like a jaded Badger fan sometime with this.
I mean, now who's being pessimistic?
I always look at it though, like maybe he's pushing O'Neal because O'Neal's not very good right now. So that would, if it's because they're both playing well and the coaches like both of them, that's phenomenal. Is it likely that the Badgers have 3 quarterbacks they really like in the room at the same time?
No.
Right.
But it's part of the development process. And if they're doing that, if they're using that as a development, like and Danny O'Neil is going to be on the roster transfer for a couple years, 3 years, actually. So I'm good with him knowing that he needs to work harder and keep getting better.
I think it's totally fair. Any concerns? This is the other one I had on the quarterback spot, and you can tell me no. And for me, it's mostly no, by the way. Any concerns that Carter Smith is 4th on the depth chart? And I will caveat it by a lot of 4-star quarterbacks. There's freshman quarterbacks that start. There's quarterbacks that definitely come in as a 4-star guy and are 2nd or 3rd on the depth chart. And you wonder, at least at some point, could they play this year? Obviously, that's not going to be the case with Billy Edwards, but maybe did you expect a little bit more from Carter Smith year 1?
I'm not worried about it, and I think the reason is more big picture. I think Fickell understands the pressure that he was under, and knowing that this program needed to turn things around quickly, offensively. Jeff Grimes, I think he probably came in saying, I want an experienced quarterback. Like he was one of the first people that talked to Billy Edwards and tried to convince him to come over. So I think it's really just a function of we're as you said earlier, sometimes you got to think about this year and you don't worry about the future. And I think they're like, yeah, Carter Smith, welcome to the program, learn, grow, but we need to get better right now. And Carter Smith's not that guy to do that right now. He is not one of those. He's not an Underwood. He's not one of those guys. And you're right, 4-stars sometimes do start, but I'm totally comfortable with, as I've said a couple times, them raising the floor. That's what Fickell's trying to do right now. He's trying to raise that floor. So you do that with Edwards. You do that with bringing in a backup like Danny O'Neil and a Hunter Simmons to push him, all guys with experience. So it doesn't bother me at all. If next spring we're not seeing Carter Smith, taking strides and getting reps, that's a different story.
Yeah, I'm right. I agree with you on that. And Corey B says, wait, who isn't a jaded Badger fan right now? Yeah, that's fair. I agree with you. I'm never going to really worry about a freshman quarterback in year 1. Now his pedigree is a little different, which maybe raises expectations to a certain degree, but I think the intangibles are there. I'm just not stressed about it. They have veterans ahead of him. Not worried about it at all. Corey B also says, best quarterback sense for us. Fight me. Talking about Billy Edwards. I think it's possible. Yeah, hey, let's hope, right? That'd be awesome. I do think it's possible, which is a kind of a double-edged sword of how bad our quarterback play has generally been the last 14-ish years. And also, I think there's a level inside of Edwards because of what he played with at Maryland, that Grimes and maybe a better offensive line and a running game, if they can stay healthy, I think there's a potential that they can unlock that.
Yeah. Comment here from Ryan Willie. What's your take on this? Say goodbye to Carter Smith if he isn't the starter by next year.
It's certainly possible. I've said this before, and at this point, because some of the guys, like some of the guys I've talked to, I'll have them on the show. I'm talking like high school recruits, but like even players that like I swear they're the most positive. I love this program. I'll die for Madison, and like 2 weeks later, they're like deuces. Yep. So it's a business thing now, and I don't ever begrudge players for if they think there's a better opportunity. Because think about this: let's say hypothetically Daniel O'Neal wins a starting job next year. Why would Carter stay?
You're absolutely right, because he's going to be. I mean, he has 3 years of eligibility, so he would have 2 years as the starter, pretty much. I mean, yeah, and then it's really then you're probably sending Smith away, and you're looking at Hopkins as the guy to follow Danny O'Neal, right? So. Yeah. But then listen, hopefully Carter Smith can win that job. I hope he can. And I'm totally okay with him not being in the mix right now, but next spring, that's when we'll know.
Will, ask your question again. I didn't see it in the chat. So ask your question again, and we'll start. Rajiv or I will find it. We'll put it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think here's what I think is actually going to happen at quarterback next year, though. I think they're going to go to the portal again. They're going to bring in a veteran, because you're not going to roll into next year with Danny O'Neal and Carter Smith and hope one of those guys who's never started at this level is going to be your guy. So they're going to get a veteran. And if that veteran wins, then I could see Carter Smith sticking around again. But if you bring in a young guy or Danny O'Neal just blows up this offseason, Carter's not going to stick around, because why would he? You get a very small window of time in college, right? And you have to take advantage of it. So it is what it is.
Especially in this world of like the portal and how everyone's, it's like, what have you done for me lately type thing. It's just, yeah, you're right. You kind of just have to deal with that.
Next question I had for you. This was another conversation I was having with somebody else. We were talking about, and I love this dude. I'm not going to put his name out there, but like him and I respect his take, but he was saying, man, I almost am more worried about tight end depth than offensive line depth, losing Ashcraft. And obviously Ashcraft is a big loss, because he said it's not going to allow us to run that 12 personnel Grimes wants to run as much, right? With you have Ashcraft and Mason out there together. I'm pinging you on 2 parts of this. First, overall impact of Ashcraft, the injury, and 2, where do they pivot from there?
Well, I mean, I think it's definitely going to be impactful for sure. Like Ashcraft is a guy that is growing. I think we all agree that Mason's the number 1 at this point, especially with how he performed at camp. But you need that depth there. But I would say that, listen, Jackson Aker is still there. He's still going to get some potential look at that position. We've got a lot of youth in that room with, guys like Steck. We've even got freshmen like Davis. And then, so I honestly am not that concerned truthfully. Like I'm not trying to diminish what Ashcraft's potential is, but I'm not overly concerned about it. He wasn't like, at this point now, if you lose Mason, that's different. If you would have had Kozu and you lost Kozu, that's different. But like you're in essence, your number 2, and he wasn't a clear 2. It's like Mason and then other people. And he was never really, separating himself from the rest of that room. So I don't want anyone ever to get injured, but I definitely am not that concerned about the tight end depth, because we have other people that can fill in to produce what Ashcraft could produce.
Yeah, I'm mostly with you again on this. We've had a few moments in this show where we've drifted off course from each other, but I feel like we've come back together now. We're still in parallel. So I just think, listen, as long as you can keep the pieces there healthy, I like Ashcraft. I mean, I've talked to him. He's a great kid. So I root for everybody to be healthy and successful. But just from a production standpoint, I don't think you're losing a ton. It's different, but if you have Aker in there instead of Ashcraft with Mason, I think you're fine. And as for Austin in here, Daltreed said, bring in the Swedish Jeff. Maybe Bork gets some reps in there. I also think Steck can play some of those inline blocking moments where he can be that inline blocker. It hurts, and it hurts in the sense that if you lose somebody else now, that everybody else has to push up another line. But I actually think they're fine. I like Aker in this offense. I think Mason blowing up has been the revelation of fall camp, quite frankly, or one of them.
Can I bring up something totally off topic?
Please do it.
Like we talked about it before a couple weeks ago. You and I were doing a show, and I mentioned one of my underrated storylines was whether we were underselling the pedigree of Eugene Hilton. And I want to just say, like, my excitement level for Eugene Hilton is through the roof right now, because everywhere you look, today, like Grimes was talking about it. Like, I'm really excited, and I think people really have. I was doing a college football show the other day, and someone else that's not a Wisconsin fan was saying like he was surprised at the under recruitment of Eugene Hilton. I'm like, the bloodlines are there. Like the guy clearly has something unique. I mean, sounds like after what we heard today, Hilton's going to be in the mix. Hilton's going to get reps. He's going to get snaps. I'm really excited about what can happen here. And it instantly makes me feel better about the wide receiver room. Now, I wasn't worried about the depth there, but I was worried about like how if you lose Vinny and you lose Ballard, like who can fill in to really be that productive? Maybe we legitimately see Hilton getting proper like snap counts and actually being a key contributor as a true freshman. That's pretty special. I'm really, really excited for this kid. Been excited about him for a long time, as you know, but now even more so.
Yeah, I think he should be. I think he should be excited about a guy like that. He's looked the part. He looks natural. If you see him in practice, he moves like a sophomore or a junior. Like he moves like he's been on the field for a couple of years. This is again where I feel like I'm constantly, and I'm not meaning to do this. I'm definitely not trying to rain on your thought here because I think Hilton is going to play this year. I think he's going to be really good. I also think Ballard has been a little down this fall. I don't think he's been quite as good as, again, that spring hype going through the summer. I don't think he's been quite as consistent. Chris Brooks has had drops issues, like some that have been a little like yikes. And I love Chris. You know this. I'm a Chris Brooks guy.
Yeah.
I think some of the other maybe just a lack of consistency from those other boundary receivers has helped Hilton shine even more because he's been pretty consistent, which is a credit to him as a freshman.
Good for him for stepping up because you're right. Like we definitely had concerns about Ballard, like in the sense that he didn't get on the field at Ohio State. He has the physical tools, but can he really be a receiver? So maybe Vinny and Hilton are our starting wideouts at the end of the season. That absolutely could be a thing.
Wouldn't shock me. Or here's the thing with Ballard, and I mentioned this in the show yesterday. And then we got Will's chat up here. I see Cade in the chat, Badger Bournemouth, Mitch. We got some other good stuff in here for sure. I almost think Ballard's importance on the team is similar to a three-point shooter in the corner in basketball. He doesn't even need to touch the ball, but his skill set draws the defense towards him. It creates some gravity. Ballard just on the boundary, just running a 9 route every play is going to draw some gravity. And I almost think his just skill set there, whether he catches the ball or not, is pretty important to this offense.
Mm-hmm. And think about jet sweep options, right? Like what can he do out of the backfield? Different like sort of gadget stuff. I mean, I think we'll see that from him. We'll see it from Deckel. We'll see it from Tretch. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of, it's good. It's good that we're talking about this level of talent though, because there's a lot of guys in them that can actually be impactful.
Let's hit this question, Will Hanna. What is your vision from Edwards from a stats ceiling standpoint? I included what I think his stats will be, which I'm trying to go up and find. I'm just going to throw what he did his last season at Maryland in, just so everyone sees the context. Last year at Maryland, 2,800 yards, 65% completion percentage, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks.
Yeah. So while you're looking for that comment, I definitely think like 3,000 yards is on the table. I think that I would probably say 30. I mean, if we're talking ceiling, I would say probably 31, but I think it's probably going to be more like the 28-ish range, hopefully. So I would say ceiling of 3,000, potentially a little bit more. From a touchdown perspective, I mean, look, I think the Grimes system benefits that. I think we're going to have a lot of good movement, as we've said multiple times, multiplicity that Grimes has. So I could definitely see a 25 touchdown ceiling for sure. I mean, so I would say 3,025.
And Will handed down here 3 to 3,200, 25 to 30 touchdowns and 8 picks. I'll say there's 2 things with this. If you get that from Edwards, this is going to be a good year.
I mean, for sure.
And then he is the best quarterback.
We're talking ceiling, yeah.
Then he is the best quarterback since Russell Wilson. And we are talking ceiling here. I think if 3,000 and about 25 is probably my ceiling. And if he gets 25, I think he's probably going to have more like 10 or 12 picks. He takes some chances he shouldn't. He's done it in practice again. I don't think you're going to get that 3 to 4 to 1 touchdown interception ratio from Billy Edwards ever. But I do think you can get 3,000 yards out of him. I think that is about the ceiling, but I think you could get that with a couple rushing touchdowns, maybe 25 total touchdowns. I think that's possible.
Now, that being said, you do have to look at the opponents too. Like, you mentioned like putting it in harm's way. Like, yeah, I mean, we're going to have some guys we're going to have some NFL caliber cornerbacks that he's going to be facing for sure. So yeah, there's that piece of it as well.
Yeah, dude, it really is a tough schedule. People talk about.
You try not to think about that too much, but it's pretty impossible.
All Tree says it's going to be a good year. Get on the hype train, Ryan. I feel like I'm mostly there This offensive line, I'm not gonna lie, this offensive line thing is worrying me as a fan.
Mhm.
Just as a fan,
Yeah.
I am worried about the offensive line. I'll be completely
Ever since Haywood went down, we've been worried about it, and rightfully so. Like it is a concern. I've done a couple different random shows recently, and I've been talking about like the biggest issue on the offense. It's the offensive line depth. There's no doubt about that right now. Like that's clearly the issue. We talk so much about Wisconsin in the trenches, and you still have that question on the defensive line. We've got better, but that's still a question. Offensive line still a question. You don't want Wisconsin teams having questions in the trenches. It's not good for business. It's just not. So I'm really hoping that both sides of the trenches outperform what we're expecting. But yeah, it'd be nice to not have any concerns in the trenches because that's where we're going to win games.
What's your number 2 concern? Like you and I have spent this entire time waxing poetically about the offensive line, potential issues there.
Yeah.
What's your number 2?
It's defensive line still. It's whether or not I mean, the people are there, the bodies are there, the size is there, but I'm constantly going to be worried about this until I see it. Like I need Allegro and Curtis to be the leading tacklers. I don't want to see our defensive tackles getting swallowed up on every play. I don't want to have tackles for loss that's lowest in the country. Like I need to see that our defensive line can actually compete against 6 amazing teams. Like we're going to play 6 top 25 teams. Like I'm always going to be concerned about the trenches, especially defense, until we can actually see this. And a Mike Tressel defensive line look better than recently.
I think it's fair. I feel pretty. I think to me it might be. Oh gosh, it's a good question. See, this is where I start to think I'm too high on this team when I have to search my brain for my next worry. Am I too high on this team at this point? Because I'm actually kind of sold on the defense line for what I think it's going to be, which is going to be a solid grouping. I don't have expectations beyond that, but I'm pretty sure that floor is going to be decently high this year. I do worry if you lose another tight end. I do worry a little bit about some of the receivers that I was higher on. Talking about a Tretch, I didn't see a ton out of him in moments. I'm not really sure what his role is consistently going to be. Ballard is another one that I expect a little bit more out of. Tackett Curtis, I expect a little bit more out of. Watching practice, it might just be some of those individual pieces I think that need to play well this year that I didn't see. Maybe, and it's unfair to say didn't live up to my expectations. That doesn't matter. But here's what it is. Let me rephrase it as I'm thinking through this. There's a lot of pieces that are a little unproven on this team that have to play well this year, and maybe that's my concern. Mm-hmm. Ballard, Tretch, Tackett, some of those defensive line pieces, Austin Brown, Emilio Agard. Those guys haven't proven a lot. Dilon Jones, right? They're gonna have to do it this year.
Yeah, it's definitely, and Luke Fickell has said something similar to this, and I'm paraphrasing about just like, you've got to get more out of these guys. You've got to outperform, right? And so it's going to require that, especially with who we're playing. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, that's the tail of the season, right? It's all that X factor of, can these guys out, everyone's going to be like right here. Can you get this much more out of every guy that you just mentioned? And if you do, then all of a sudden you can see a path to 7-5, to 8-4. I mean, if you're getting that good production out of that list of guys that you just gave, versus if Tackett Curtis doesn't show up as much, if the defensive line does get swallowed up, then you can see the 5-7 path, right? I mean, it's very easy, but it depends on our ability to really truly stop the run, get disruption in the backfield, not have an offensive line that gets hurt, be able to run the ball. Like there's so many factors, but the paths are there. You can definitely see it both ways.
And Tyler Strieber, number 2 is the corner room, lack of experience, step behind Rico and Nizier, who's out for now. Matthew Anderson is going to push back and say Riger will make the defense line look good, Rajiv. He's going to murder quarterbacks.
I would say, okay, yeah, I'm very confident about Riger, so that's fair, Matt. But my question is still the interior. Like Riger's not an interior guy. I'm worried about the interior.
Yeah, and Badger Bournemouth also worried about tackles for loss, sacks. We're going to kind of wrap it up there. We're already gone long, but I was kind of stoked that Rajiv jumped on, so we just kind of kept rolling with it. Anything else on your mind right now, Rajiv, that you've been thinking about, haven't talked enough about? What else is going on with you?
Man, I am just like, can it get here already? Can we be at that Thursday the 28th? Because I'm just so excited. I do think that, I'm doing the Know Your Foe series on the Bucky Report. So I did an Iowa one this week, and boy, he was pumped. He was it's a locked on guy, Trent. He's very excited about his team. I do sometimes think that as much as we talk about how excited we are, other teams are doing the same thing. Like the Big Ten could have gone up. Wisconsin got better. So did everybody else. So it's a little worrying that looking at that October stretch, like Iowa, Minnesota, not Minnesota, screw Minnesota, but like Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Washington, those are 4 games that some people would say, oh, we could win them. And that's how you get to that's how you see the 8-4 record. If you got wins over Iowa and Washington and Indiana, Illinois, all 4 of those teams are pumped about their year. It's just, we need to see it on the field, but man, it's a little worrying.
It's really true. I mean, we are in optimism season where every player's in the best shape and everybody looks great. I talk to those Locked On guys all the time. Listen to Locked On Washington, Locked On Huskies guy. They love their quarterback situation. I can tell you, sometimes we look at these teams like we are 2017 Wisconsin and they are 2017 versions of themselves. Go talk to Jacob Goings at Locked On Hoosiers. Bro, he doesn't look at us as a game that's a toss-up. Say it's right or wrong, whatever you want to say. Like, they're very excited about the squad they have. Locked On Illinois, Sonny. Like, Locked On Huskies, they think they're going to come into Camp Randall beat us. You've talked to Trent. He's a great dude. Iowa's pretty high in their team right now. I'm just saying, man, his schedule's brutal, and everybody thinks they've gotten better. I actually think we've gotten better as well. But, yeah, so does everybody else. And we got to
outperform. Got to outperform. It's all game of inches, right? There's in this conference, the margins are very thin. So it's who can. That's where coaching comes in, right? Can Luke Fickell do his part and get a little more out of these guys?
Yeah, and Bo says if they lose one of those first 2 games, it'll be the longest season ever. They can't.
No. 3-1. 3-1 is the minimum. And if we're not, I'm really excited about the reaction. I texted Ryan this other day. I'm very, very, very pumped about the football season here, coming on, doing reaction shows again. But I'm telling you, if we're not 3-1 after those first 4 games, I don't know how I'm going to sleep at night. Like, that is going to be rough. 3-1 is the bare minimum, period, end of discussion. And frankly, I want to see us kick the crap out of Miami and Middle Tennessee State. I don't want to have games where, like, kind of like last year, I forgot who we played at the top of the season. Buffalo 2 years ago, and then last year it was whatever. And it was just like Western Michigan. And it wasn't like what we really wanted, right? And we knew something was up. I want to see Miami get their teeth kicked in.
Yeah, it felt gross, right? You look back to those games and it was like slogging out in the third quarter. You're down by 3. And it's just like, I think we institutionalized it away. We compartmentalized it away a little bit, but there will be none of that this year. If we come out and we look sloppy and it looks like we're struggling in those first 2 games, the warning flags go up and the flares go up.
Yep.
Because this team is now in year 3 of this system. We've invested heavily in the spots that we think we need to. We need to pump those teams. And it feels like the last 2 years, man, we've been kind of a paper tiger out of conference. We've shown up and it can't happen this year. And Bo's right. If you lose one of those first 2 games, bro, I've already said, if we lose one of those first 2 games, I'm going to stop. I'm going to do Locked On History. Every day I'm going to do a history show, and that'll be my gig then. Because I need this team to be good for my sanity, man.
Yeah, dude. It's going to be bad. It's going to be rough. But it's not going to happen. But we got to think positive. It's not going to happen. Like, we're going to come out here, pump those teams, and then Alabama will be Alabama.
All right, rapid fire here. Matthew Anderson, Iowa did not get better. No chance. Daltrey, Washington doesn't win on the road. Alien Space, better second halves last year. They win Penn State, USC, and Oregon games.
Very good point. I just want to stop there that's a really good thing. It's like I was doing another show recently, as I mentioned, and we were literally any quarterback that had any kind of anything last year away from beating Penn State and Oregon at home. With Braden Locke as our quarterback, we were a drive away both times. Like that, it's fine. As I said, fine margins.
Yeah, with the Longo fun zone there, we almost beat some really good teams. And that second half with more depth on the defensive line, which we should have this year, I think that makes a difference in those types of games, man. Daltrey also just says Illinois is trash. Let's go, Daltrey. Daltrey is quickly becoming one of my favorite posters, favorite commenters in the show. Let's go. Illinois is trash. Let's go. Any other Nebraska's garbage. Daltrey is just rolling. Don't get me started on Minnesota. Muppy B, the Indiana guy's really confident. If I were to quickly do my power rankings, top 3 most overconfident Locked On Big Ten hosts, love them all. Locked On Penn State, Locked On Hoosiers, and gosh, who would be a third one?
Boy, sure. Penn State, maybe?
Yeah, Penn State, definitely Penn State. Penn State, Hoosiers, and it might be, honestly, the Buckeyes. But you can't be overconfident if you're a Buckeyes fan because you just always win anyway. So maybe just those 2.
But the IU guy, listen, IU's not confident enough to beat Virginia, but whatever, that's fine.
I did talk to him about that. Lystra says, what happened to Michigan? They're still there too. That's the one we didn't even touch on, and Bill Connolly just came out with his top 146 rankings. He had him at 8. Like, this schedule is tough, man. Daltrey says Bama's a win, calling it now. Let's go. All right, well, let's wrap it there. Again, on Wisconsin, we have 50 minutes, which is way longer than I normally do. Really do appreciate you guys. Indiana goes back to irrelevancy this year. I'm here for that, Bo. Absolutely here for that. Wrap it up here. A bunch more content coming up as always on Wisconsin. And thank you so much for jumping in on a beautiful Friday night. Talk to you later.